Chapter 12, A New Deal. I went out to hunt for McSwain. Neither city directory nor telephone book could tell me anything. Did the pool rooms, cigar stores, speakeasy, looking around first, then asking cautious questions. That got me nothing. I walked the streets, looking for bowed legs. That got me nothing. I decided to go back to my hotel, grab a nap, and resume the hunting at night. In a far corner of the lobby, a man stopped, hiding behind a newspaper, and came out to meet me. He had bowed legs, a hog jaw, and was McSwain. I nodded carelessly at him and walked on toward the elevators. He followed me, mumbling, "Hey, you got a minute?" "Yeah, just about." I stopped, pretending indifference. "Let's get out of sight," he said nervously. I took him up to my room. He straddled a chair and put a match in his mouth. I sat on the side of the bed and waited for him to say something. He chewed his match a while and began, "I'm going to come clean with you, brother. You mean you're going to tell me you knew me when you braced me yesterday?" I asked. "And you're going to tell me Bush hadn't told you to bet on him, and you didn't until afterwards. And you knew about his record because he used to be a bull, and you thought if you could get me to put it to him, you could clean up a little dough playing him." "I'll be damned if I was going to come through with that much," he said. "But since it's been said, I'll put a yes to it." "Did you clean up?" "I won myself 600 Ironmen." He pushed his hat back and scratched his forehead with the chewed end of his match. "And then I lose myself that much and own 200 and some in a crap game. What do you think of that? I pick up 600 berries like shooting fish, and have to bum for 4 bits for breakfast." I said it was a tough break, but that was the kind of world we lived in, he said. "Uh-huh." Put the match back in his mouth, ground it some more, and added, "That's why I thought I'd come to see you. I used to be in the racket myself, and—" "What did Noonan put the skids under you for?" "Skids? What skids? I quit. I came into a piece of change when the wife got killed in an automobile accident. Insurance. And I quit." "I heard he kicked you out the time his brother shot himself." "Well, then you heard wrong. It was just after that. But you can ask him if I didn't quit." "It's not that much to me. Go on. Tell me why you came to see me." "Busted flat. I know you're a Continental op, and I got a pretty good hunch what you're up to here. I'm close to a lot of things going on both sides of things in this burg. There's things I could do for you, being an ex-dick, knowing the ropes both ways." "You want a stool pigeon for me?" He looked me straight in the eye and said evenly, "There's no sense in a man picking out the worst name he can find for everything." "I'll give you something to do, McSwain." I took out Myrtle Jennison's document and passed it to him. "Tell me about that." He read it through carefully, his lips framing the words, the match wavering up and down in his mouth. He got up, put the paper on the bed beside me, and scowled down at it. "There's something I'll have to find out about first," he said, very solemnly. "I'll be back in a little while and give you the whole story." I laughed and told him, "Don't be silly. You know I'm not going to let you walk out on me." "I don't know that." He shook his head, still solemnly. "Neither do you. All you know is whether you're going to try to stop me." "The answer's yeah," I said, while I considered that he was fairly hard and strong, 6 or 7 years younger than I, and 20 or 30 pounds lighter. He stood at the foot of the bed and looked at me with solemn eyes. I sat on the side of the bed and looked at him with whatever kind of eyes I had at the time. We did this for nearly 3 minutes. I used part of the time measuring the distance between us, figuring out how by throwing my body back on the bed and turning on my hip I could get my heels in his face if he jumped me. He was too close for me to pull a gun. I'd just finished his metal map making when he spoke. That lousy ring wasn't worth no grand. I did swell to get 2 centuries for it. He shook his head again and said, First I want to know what you're meaning to do about it. Cop whisper. I didn't mean that. I mean with me. You'll have to go over to the hall with me. I won't. Why not? You're only a witness. I'm only a witness that Noonan can hang a bribe-taking or an accomplice after the act rap on, or both. And he'd be tickled simple to have the chance. His jaw-wagging didn't seem to be leading anywhere. I said, That's too bad, but you're going to see him. Try and take me. I sat up straighter and slid my right hand back to my hip. He grabbed for me. I threw my body back on the bed, did the hip spin, swung my feet at him. It was a good trick, only it didn't work. In his hurry to get at me, he bumped the bed aside, just enough to spill me off on the floor. I landed all sprawled out on my back, kept dragging at my gun, while I tried to roll under the bed. Missing me, his lunge carried him over the low footboard, over the side of the bed, came down beside me on the back of his neck, his body somersaulting over. I put the muzzle of my gun in his left eye and said, You're making a fine pair of clowns of us. Be still while I get up, or I'll make an opening in your head for brains to leak in. Got up, found and pocketed my document, and let him get up. Knock the dents out of your hat and put your necktie in front, so you won't disgrace me going through the streets. I ordered him after I had run a hand over his clothes and found nothing that felt like a weapon. You can suit yourself about remembering that this gat is going to be in my overcoat pocket, with a hand on it. He straightened his hat and tie and said, Hey, listen, I'm in this, I guess, and cutting up won't get me nothing. Suppose I be good. Could you forget about the tussle? See, maybe it'd be smoother for me if they thought I came along without being dragged. Okay. Thanks, brother. Noonan was out eating. We had to wait half an hour in his outer office. When he came in, he greeted me with the usual, How are you? That certainly is fine. And the rest of it. He didn't say anything to McSwain, simply eyed him sourly. We went into the chief's private office. He pulled a chair over to his desk for me, and then sat in his own, ignoring the ex-dick. I gave Noonan the sick girl's document. He gave it one glance, bounced out of his chair, and smashed a fist the size of a cantaloupe into McSwain's face. Punch carried McSwain across the room until a wall stopped him. The wall creaked under the strain, and a framed photograph of Noonan and other city dignitaries welcoming somebody in spats dropped down to the floor with the hit man. Fat Chief waddled over, picked up the picture, and beat it to splinters on McSwain's head and shoulders. Noonan came back to his desk, puffing, smiling, saying cheerfully to me, That fellow's a rat if there ever was one. McSwain sat up and looked around, bleeding from nose, mouth, and head. Noonan roared at him, Come here, you. McSwain said, Yes, Chief, scrambled up and ran over to the desk. Noonan said, Come through or I'll kill you. McSwain said, Yes, Chief. It was like she said, only the rock wasn't worth no grand. But she gave me it and the 200 to keep my mouth shut, because I got there just when she asked him, Who did it, Tim? And he says, Max. He says it's kind of loud and sharp, like he wanted to get it out before he died, because he died right then, almost before he'd got it out. That's the way it was, Chief, but the rock wasn't worth no— Damn the rock, Noonan barked, and stop bleeding on my rug. McSwain hunted in his pocket for a dirty handkerchief, mopped his nose and mouth with it, and jabbered on. "That's the way it was, Chief. Everything else was like I said at the time, only I didn't say anything about hearing him say Max done it. I know I hadn't ought to." "Shut up," Noonan said, and pressed one of the buttons on his desk. A uniformed copper came in. The chief jerked a thumb at McSwain and said, "Take this baby down cellar and let the wrecking crew work on him before you lock him up." McSwain started a desperate plea. "Oh, Chief," but the copper took him away before he could get any further. Noonan stuck a cigar at me, tapped the document with another, and asked, "Where's this broad?" "In the city hospital, dying. You'll have the cutter get a stiff out of her." "That one's not so good legally. I framed it for effect. Another thing. I hear that Pete Murray and Whisper aren't playmates anymore. Wasn't Murray one of his alibis?" Chief said, "He was." Picked up one of his phones and said, "McGraw," and then, "Get hold of Pete Murray and ask him to drop in, and have Tony Augusti picked up for the knife throwing." He put the phone down, stood up, made a lot of cigar smoke, and said through it, "I haven't always been on the up and up with you." I thought that was putting it mildly, but I didn't say anything while he went on. "You know your way around. You know what these jobs are. There's this one and that one that's got to be listened to. Just because a man's chief of police doesn't mean he's chief. Maybe you're a lot of trouble to somebody. That can be a lot of trouble to me. Don't make any difference. If I think you're a right guy, I got to play with them that play with me. See what I mean?" I wagged my head to show I did. "That's the way it was," he said, "but no more. This is something else, a new deal. When the old woman kicked off, Tim was just a lad. She said to me, 'Take care of him, John,' and I promised I would. And then Whisper murders him on the account of that tramp." He reached down and took my hand. "See what I'm getting at? That's 1.5 years ago, and you give me my first chance to hang it on him. I'm telling you, there's no man in Personville that's got a voice big enough to talk you down. Not after today." That pleased me, and I said so. We purred at each other until a lanky man with an extremely upturned nose in the middle of a round and freckled face was ushered in. It was Pete Murray. "We were just wondering about the time when Tim died," the chief said when Murray had been given a chair and a cigar. "Where Whisper was." "You were out on the lake that night, weren't you?" "Yep," Murray said, and the end of his nose got sharper. "With Whisper?" "I wasn't with him all the time." "Were you with him at the time of the shooting?" "Nope." The chief's greenish eyes got smaller and brighter. He asked softly, "You know where he was?" "Nope." Chief sighed in a thoroughly satisfied way and leaned back in his chair. "Damn it, Pete," he said. "You told us before that you were with him at the bar." "Yep, I did," the lanky man admitted. "But that don't mean nothing except that he asked me to, and I didn't mind helping out a friend." "Meanwhile, you don't mind standing a perjury rap." "Don't kid me." Murray spit vigorously in the cuspidor. "I didn't say nothing in no courtrooms." "How about Jerry and George Kelly and O'Brien?" the chief asked. "Did they say they were with him just because he asked them to?" "O'Brien did. I don't know nothing about the others. I was going out of the bar when I ran into Whisper, Jerry, and Kelly, and walked back to have a shot with them. Kelly told me Tim had been knocked off. Then Whisper says, 'It never hurts anybody to have an alibi.' We were here all the time, weren't we?" And he looks at O'Brien, who's behind the bar. O'Brien says, "Sure you was." And when Whisper looks at me, I say the same thing. But I don't know no reason why I've got to cover him up nowadays. And Kelly said Tim had been knocked off. Didn't say that he had been found dead. Knocked off was the words he used, the chief said. Thanks, Peake. You oughtn't to have done like you did, but what's done is done. How are the kids? Murray said they were doing fine, only the baby wasn't as fat as he'd like to have him. Noonan phoned the prosecuting attorney's office and had Dart and a stenographer take Peake's story before he left. Noonan, Dart, and the stenographer set out for City Hospital to get a complete statement from Myrtle Jennison. I didn't go long. I decided I needed sleep, told the chief I would see him later, and returned to the hotel.